Welcome to another inspiring episode of the Elite Expert Insider Podcast. Hosts Melanie Johnson and Jen Foster are the owners of Elite Online Publishing. They're both Wall Street Journal, USA Today bestselling authors. We're really glad you're here because this podcast was designed for you. Meet industry experts that share their secrets and strategies. Get successful results for your business in money, relationships, health, and your life. Each episode is going to inspire you to take action towards reaching your greatness.
Hey everyone, it's Melanie Johnson. Thanks for joining us today for another great podcast. We hope you're having a super day. Jenn Foster, my co-owner with Elite Online Publishing, is here. Hey Jen, how you doing?
Doing great today. Thanks, Melanie.
I just want to tell you, we are going to go over some fantastic things. Some of you don't even know what a CO of a company is. So we are going to go into a deep dive of things of how to enhance your delivery, how to do price increase strategies, implement sales process, staffing, accountability, productivity. Do you sound overwhelmed already? So if you do, we have someone, Valerie Hayes, who's going to simplify all of that for you. And she does a fractional COO. She comes in and helps business owners streamline all of that and make your business more productive and just go through all those processes that can be overwhelming for you. So let's take a deep dive and learn what a COO is and actually does and what can it do to benefit your company. Valerie, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Melanie. I'm so excited to be here with both you and Jen.
Well, tell us, Valerie, a little bit of your background and how you got into this industry.
Sure. So I was in corporate America for almost 20 years, working for 3 different Fortune 500 companies in very different businesses. And I was a human resources executive, but I wasn't that kind of human resources executive who just does administrative work. I was solving business problems by making sure we are organized correctly and we're utilizing the resources available. And I got to a point where, you know how it is, you feel that you've hit that glass ceiling and you feel like you're working all the time, making other people wealthy. And so I decided to start my own business, which I did in 2002. And within 5 years, I became one of the top 3 leaders in my field nationally. And I continued that business. It's a very niche part of high performance coaching, public speaking coaching, very niche area. And with COVID, not a huge surprise, the public speaking thing just totally imploded, totally collapsed. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to take this time to brush up on some of my skills so that when COVID's over, I'm ready to jump back in. And so I was taking some online courses and coaching programs, and I noticed that a lot of the small business owners in the programs could not implement any of the ideas. They understood what they were supposed to be doing, but they couldn't actually do it. And it was all sales and marketing related stuff. So they couldn't grow their business. And I could tell that what they didn't understand was because they didn't have the proper infrastructure in place. They didn't have the right team. They didn't have routine processes and procedures. They didn't have a good mindset. The leadership was lacking. And I could tell that they didn't understand, and the coach couldn't understand either why they weren't able to implement things. And you could tell by the look on the faces, they were just frustrated and confused and disappointed that they weren't getting out of the course what they thought they were. And I always believe, one believes, right, that the reason one becomes a national leader in one niche is because one's good at that actual skill, right? We hope that's true. But for me, the reason why I was able to quickly advance over some of my competitors was because I ran my business really well. Because we all get into business because we love this particular skill or area of expertise that we want to do. And we tend to focus all our time on that. But I also focused time on running my business, which is why I became so financially successful and recognized, right? And so I decided, okay, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. And I hung out my shingle as a fractional COO to help business owners understand what they need in place to be able to actually grow their business.
So tell me, let's dive into processes, because I just feel like that's such a huge thing. When we really started paying attention to our processes and diving in that, all of a sudden I felt a whole shift in our company. So when you walk into an organization, what is the first thing that you do and that you are finding in their processes? And what is most of the things that are lacking that make the biggest difference when they implement?
That is a great question, because most people try to start with processes. And actually, you have to start with the people. You need to be, I come in and I get to know the people, I'm observing, I'm seeing how they're communicating amongst themselves, which is reflective of typically the lack of processes, right?
Mhm.
And it's really the people, because oftentimes when you're to a point where your growth has stalled, or maybe it went up and then dipped back down, you have to look at the people first, because if you don't have the right people in the right seats, you're not going to be able to implement processes. Because let's pretend that we had the absolutely 100% perfect people in each and every job. Okay, that's not reality, but let's just pretend. You wouldn't even need processes and procedures because everybody would know what they were supposed to do when. So you have to get the right people in the right seats first. Then you start introducing process change slowly. You try to identify the lowest hanging fruit, right? Because team members are naturally resistant of change. They
Mhm.
feel like even though you can tell them 4,000 times that processes and procedures are meant to improve the business, they think it's a way to trap them and criticize their performance, right? This is a natural human nature to assume the negative. And so we look for low-hanging fruit that helps them in their jobs. It makes their job less stressful, helps them be more successful in their job. So we start with the small things, right? That really makes an impact to the direct team member. And then we move on to the larger vision, larger picture things. And what you're trying to do is build momentum so that at the same time that you're getting new processes and procedures in place, you're getting buy-in from your team, and they understand that now process improvement is a natural part of the business culture. Whatever we're doing and whatever position we're currently at, level we're at with a performance of a task or procedure, that we're always looking for, how could I improve that? And that's a real culture shift for most small businesses. And it's really important that it comes from the top. This bottom-up stuff is not really workable when you're looking for processes improvement. The top has to buy in, otherwise it's just going to fall flat.
So when you say you start with people, is it hard sometimes because there's some people in the organization that don't need to be working there, like the staffing part of it? I know for us, it's always hard for me to fire people.
It is challenging, especially when people have worked in an organization for a long time, their skills are no longer a fit, or the business has continued to grow, but that individual has not grown their skills and there's a personal relationship. But here's the thing, in 20 years of human resources, what I've realized is that I never once fired someone who wasn't unhappy in their job and didn't know at some level that they weren't really cutting it and this wasn't a great fit for them. So the sooner that you can acknowledge that and then help transition them from the organization, not just, okay, you're fired today and out you go, right?
Yeah.
But if you can say, hey, we don't see this as a fit for you, we're moving in this direction, you seem to be going in that direction, how can we support you? How can we make this easy for you to move on? Which we all try to that conversation or dodge that conversation. But the sooner you have that conversation, the sooner you're going to be able to resolve the issue for you and help them move on to a position that they can actually be successful in, which is really better for them too.
Yeah. And I notice you talk a lot about metrics, whether it's in sales and productivity, accountability. Break that down of you have to have income, right, to make everything else go. Because if you don't have people coming in the door, then the rest of the process don't get implemented. So kind of let's start with the sales in how do you make great processes and implement them in the sales process?
What's really interesting is most small businesses, obviously everyone wants to grow sales, right? Vast majority of small businesses, probably $2 million or less, are not tracking sales. They're not tracking where their leads are coming from. They're not qualifying their leads. So they end up working with customers that are not their ideal customer and sort of a pain in the you-know-what. And they aren't tracking how much it costs them to generate a lead, how much it costs them to close a deal, and then how much they're spending on the delivery of that deal, whether it's a product or a service. And so what I try to do as quickly as possible is get people focused on one primary lead source. That might be a website. It might be your Instagram, social media, especially if you're an influencer, but it could be client referral. I have a client who does almost all her work via client referral, which is great. And so you try to identify your one primary lead source, and then you put metrics in place to track how that lead comes in and what happens to that lead during the sales process, right? And by tracking the lead, you're going to see where you have holes or shortcomings in your sales process that you can then tweak. If you try to put metrics in place for 3 or 4 lead sources, your team is going to tip over. It's going to be really hard, and you're not going to be able to put metrics in place as quickly. So if you can put metrics and a sales process in place for that one primary lead source, then the team is going to understand how to quickly use that same process of metrics and tracking of the sales process for your other lead sources. The vast majority of small businesses have 2 to 3 lead sources. So really, once you get that primary lead source all set up, you've really only got to reproduce it for 2 more.
I love that. So when you would come into a business, like when I started out, I thought I had a sales process, but it was like not a sales process. So if you came into a small business that just started out, is it more like a coaching thing that you do when you come in to help them, or do you actually implement it for them? Like,
it's a combination of both. I like to explain it this way. There are 3 sort of resources that a small business can hire. A consultant who you hire for a short-term need, a short-term project. They do the work for you, and then they give it to you, and then they're done. So you've got the project completed, you've got whatever it is you needed, but there's no skill transfer from the consultant to your business. Or you can use a business coach, and everybody, let's all be honest, business coaches are so fabulous, right? They're amazing. A business coach is advising you on what you should do, maybe telling you how to do it or offering you resources to do it, but it's still somewhat a do-it-yourself situation where you and your team are needing to implement it. And that can be difficult if you don't have the skill set, experience, or enough team members. A fractional executive, so in my case, a fractional CEO, comes in and is just like a part-time employee on your team. So as a fractional COO, I provide leadership, direction, coaching, mentoring to everyone on the team. In addition to putting processes and procedures in place, my goal is always to be mentoring and developing the team so that they're growing as the business grows, right? So I'm always trying to be in my head 6 months ahead of where I am right now in thinking of how I'm developing the team. So right now I'm developing team members in my client businesses for where I need them to be 6 months from now. But I do actually also do the work. I have written copy, I've created sales processes, I've created pricing models, client communications. And the reason why I do that is to help the team members understand how we need to raise the bar, that the quality of work that was done before at that price point. When you raise your price point as a business, your customer expects the quality of product or service to be raised as well. Oftentimes, as I'm mentoring and coaching, I'm subtly lifting up the quality of excellence or the standard of excellence that they, as the everyday, this is how we do it now. And that, I think, is one of the things that a lot of people overlook in processes and procedures. Processes and procedures are helpful, but if you don't have a high standard of excellence, even processes and procedures won't save you.
That's a good point. And I think it comes from the leadership, like you talked, it has to come from top up. So that's where the business owner has to be the leader and set that into motion. How do you help with productivity to really increase that?
I'm so glad you asked that, because I think this is a commonly misunderstood aspect of growing a business. Most people think that you increase productivity by putting metrics in place and making aggressive metrics or stretch metrics. Don't you love that word, stretch goals, right? And yeah, that might work short term, but your business will only grow at the level of productivity and standard of excellence that you as the leader set.
Yeah.
Running a business is very much like parenting. It's my kids will do what I do, not what I say, right? So the level of the quantity of work or productivity that you demonstrate as the leader is the highest possible quantity you can expect from your team. And the level of excellence that you produce that work is the highest level of excellence that your team will aspire to. Because even if you jump up and down and say, I'll give you like $10,000 bonus, and if you hit these metrics, they'll be like, why should I bother? You don't. Why should I work hard to make you wealthy? You're not doing anything. You're just sitting on your fanny foo-foo playing golf and having lunches with clients. Why should I do that? And so people need to understand, as the business leader, you really are a leader. You're not just the idea person. You're not just the primary salesperson or brand ambassador for the business. You are setting the expectations that you can realistically hold your own employees to.
So how do you get to the point where they say you're not an owner or you're not an operator anymore, you're an owner, right? So that you're managing the management or the team, but you're not in the weeds doing everything. And maybe you do get to go play golf. That's the dream, right? The company, you don't have to be there for the company to run. So how do you do that with keeping that?
That is a really great question. I think a lot of that has to do with, first, as a fractional COO, I totally understand that when I first come in, that the CEO or the owner is going to be reluctant to give up any control, right? They've grown the business to a certain point. They are thinking, I've done a really good job getting it here. I know what I'm doing, but they've brought me in because there's some level of stress or some level of problem that they can't solve. Oftentimes it's that they're working 24/7, 365. They can't even take a vacation, right? Or they can't relax when they're with their family, or they're having to do things, aspects of the job of owning a company and running it that they don't really enjoy and they don't really feel they're good at, so they're not doing their best at. And what I come in is put people, team members in place and processes and procedures in place that frame or highlight what the business owner, CEO does really, so that we can have them operating in their focus of genius as much as possible, their zone of genius. This is what they do really well. We really need them to do this because they're the best at this. Let's bring other people in to do these other things. And once you get people to operate in their zone of genius, they just naturally increase their own production and naturally are producing work at a high level of excellence. It's when they're trying to do the other stuff that they're not really good at, but they think they have to, oh, I'm running the business, I have to do that. No, hire people who are better at that than you and work in your zone of genius as much as possible.
I like that. Let's talk a little bit about prices, because inflation, all the things that are happening. How do you implement price increases without like steering away your clients?
The first thing you have to understand about setting prices and then growing them is, do not start, if you're starting out in business or if you're early on in your business, do not start at the high end of the price range, right? Because people are like, oh, sell your value, make sure you're getting paid your worth. And I'm all on board with that, right? All on board with that. But if you start too high and don't get business, and then you have to drop your price, dropping your prices is the kiss of death. Kiss of death, because they all say, oh, you dropped your prices. You're either not doing very good work or people aren't calling you. So try to start at what I call no-brainer pricing, right? Where you've done your research in the industry, what you're good at and that kind of thing. And you've identified the price range and pick a price for your package or your services or your product that if someone saw that and thought, oh, they're pretty good at this, oh my God, that's a no-brainer. I should totally go with that. So start with no-brainer pricing. And then as you become busier and busier, you have overwhelming product demand, you're getting booked as a coach. As you become busier and busier, you gradually raise your prices. I think the fastest you can raise prices is every year is good if your business is growing. And then as you raise prices, right, for a product or service, you can also come back in and offer some lower level services that you weren't necessarily offering before, so that you still have more service options or product options, and you also have a wider variety of pricing. When people see you increasing your prices on a regular basis, they're going to realize that you're in demand, that your product or service is in demand. It's very rough to start out at a price and hang on to that price for 6 or 7 years, which I'm sorry to say a lot of businesses do, and then suddenly raise the prices. Then your clients get mad. So if you slowly raise your prices every 6 to 12 months and continue to do that, you're not going to get the resistance and pushback as if you start with a high price and have to drop it, or you sit at a price for too long and don't adjust. And also, we need to be aware that during this economic downturn, whether you call it a recession or not, everybody's got their opinion. It's good to offer right now some lower level options, some sort of entry level options, because business owners are hanging on to their money right now. They don't know, is this going to last 6 months, 18 months, forever? That's what it feels like. And so if you have more of a lower level entry point that you can offer them now to get them on board, see what a great product or service you offer, so that then when the economy bounces back and they're a little more free with what they have to spend, then they can choose to move up in your product or service offering.
That makes sense. And we always say a good excuse to raise your prices is when you become a best-selling author, because now all of a sudden you've gained this credibility in the marketplace and you've become an expert. And so it's that value. It's okay. You can see that now I've got this other status that I can raise my prices. This has been so great. I've got a whole page and a half of notes. So this has been outstanding. Tell us where people can find you, Valerie.
I'm most actively on LinkedIn. You can find me if you do a search on fractional COO, you can find me, or Valerie Hayes. I like to make things simple, Valerie Hayes. And my website, again, simple, valeriehayes.com. And you can email me at valerie@valeriehayes.com. If you leave a message on LinkedIn or send me an email, I answer it. It's not my assistant. And that's probably the easiest way for people to find me.
Awesome. We'll put that link up in the show notes so people can check out your website and visit you on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for being here.
Great. Thanks so much. It was great to be here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And remember, if you're thinking about writing a book, contact us at Elite Online Publishing. Go to the author submission form. And our guarantee is you will become a bestseller if you're selected to work with us. We'll talk to you soon. Have an outstanding week, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.